You have never heard these words of Albert Einstein. This interview was considered lost for decades, and many are convinced it did not disappear by chance. It was hidden deliberately. The reason is simple. Here, the great scientist allowed himself to say what he never dared to pronounce from the lectern or in front of colleagues. He spoke of death, of the soul, of what awaits a person after the last breath. "If I say everything I think," Einstein began, "they will consider me insane. But the truth, no matter how strange it may seem, will not disappear if we turn away. Death is not the end, and the deeper I look into the laws of the universe, the more clearly I see. Beyond matter hides something greater." These words sounded like a challenge to the science of his time. At the beginning of the 20th century, people were only learning to understand the atom and grasping the first mysteries of space. But Einstein dared. He broke the silence and began to speak about what he officially denied, about the other world. He slowly drew on his pipe, and silence hung in the room. "I am often asked, what will happen when I die? As a physicist, I must answer nothing, but as a man who feels the hidden laws of nature, I cannot stop there. The law of conservation of energy teaches us, nothing disappears without a trace. Everything only changes its form. Why then should the soul be an exception?" Einstein looked directly into his interlocutor's eyes. His gaze was firm, as if he tried to convince not with words, but with the sheer force of thought. If energy is eternal, then consciousness, its subtlest form, must also be preserved. We may call it the other world, but in essence, it is the continuation of the same stream of life. They even wanted to stop the recording. The host could not believe such words could ever be made public. But Einstein insisted, "Continue." He gave an example from space. "Take stars. They die, but they do not disappear. They explode as supernovae, leave behind pulsars, black holes. Matter and energy change form, but they continue to exist. If the universe itself is arranged this way, can man, its child, be different? No, I do not believe that." These words sounded blasphemous for strict science, but in them lay the very secret they tried to hide. Einstein spoke not as an academic, but as a prophet. He continued, "Many fear non-existence, but non-existence is an illusion. We are used to thinking that life is the flame of a candle that can be blown out, but I see it differently. Life is light passing through a prism. We see only one ray. When the prism disappears, the light returns to the whole." The journalist could not restrain himself. "But, Professor, are you saying that the soul is immortal?" Einstein smiled, as if he knew more than he could allow himself to say. "The word immortality is too loud. I prefer another. The soul is part of an eternal process. We are connected with the cosmos literally. Our atoms were once part of stars. Why then cannot our consciousness be part of an even greater network?" He paused, as if frightened by his own frankness. Then he added quietly, "I have no laboratory proofs, but there are hints. For many years I thought about the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. Particles, separated by enormous distances, instantly react to each other. This destroys our notions of time and space. Is this not similar to the invisible connection of souls?" These words shook even his colleagues. The man who became the symbol of strict science compared the spiritual to quantum laws. Einstein began to speak more softly, almost in a whisper. "It seems to me death is not a door behind which lies emptiness. It is a door behind which awaits the expansion of consciousness. Perhaps we become part of a great symphony, where each soul is a note. And this music has no end." He said that once, while looking through a telescope, he thought, "Stars are not just balls of plasma. Each of them is a beacon preserving the memory of the universe, and perhaps it is there that souls go, into the light that never goes out." "I do not ask you to believe me," he added. "I share only my fear and my hope. Science is not yet ready to admit this, but perhaps in 100 years humanity will understand. We never die. We only change the form of existence. Einstein leaned back in his chair and suddenly said, "Do you know what is the strangest thing? The closer I am to death, the more clearly I understand. There is no non-existence. The universe does not tolerate emptiness." He took out a notebook and unfolded it before his interlocutor. There were no formulas or equations, only short phrases like mantras: consciousness, field; death, transition; energy of the soul; energy of light. "Do you think I am joking?" he asked. "No, I spoke with colleagues. No one dared to admit it openly, but many felt the same. We see only part of the picture, but behind it lies the main truth." He leaned forward and gave an example that shocked even the interviewer. "I read about cases of clinical death. People claimed they saw themselves from the outside, that they flew toward the light. Science dismisses this as hallucinations. But why are their stories so similar to each other? Why do even those blind from birth describe images they never could have seen? Coincidence? No. This is a clue." He paused, drew on his pipe, and continued. "If a person at the moment of death can see without eyes, hear without ears, think without a brain, there is only one conclusion left. Consciousness exists separately from the body, and the body is only an instrument. The instrument broke, but the music did not disappear. It continues to play." The stenographer wrote these words with a trembling hand. It seemed as if even the paper could not bear the weight of what was being said. Einstein gave another example, this time from physics. "Imagine radio waves. We do not see them, we do not hear them, but they surround us everywhere. You only need a device to catch them. And what if the brain is such a receiver? Then death is not the end of the program, but only the breakdown of the receiver. The signal remains and seeks another path." He drew again on his pipe and added with sadness, "I regret that humanity lives in fear of emptiness. But in reality, we are surrounded by an ocean of consciousness. We return there, like drops of water return to the sea." The journalist cautiously asked, "But, Professor, if you think so, why not publish your views?" Einstein smirked. "Because the world is not ready yet. People want formulas, diagrams, tables, and I have only hints. But one day science will come to this. I think the answer is already hidden in quantum mechanics." He gave an example that in those years seemed fantastic. "Look at the quantum world. It is illogical. Particles can be in two places at once. They disappear and appear again, as if crossing a boundary. Is this not similar to what we call life after death? The soul leaves one reality and appears in another. It does not disappear. It transitions." These words sounded too bold, almost blasphemous for science, but in them one could feel the forbidden truth. Einstein fell silent for a moment, then shared a personal memory. "When my mother died, I sat at her bedside, and I swear, something strange happened in the room. I felt a lightness, as if the air had become brighter. At that moment I realized she did not disappear. Something left the body and remained nearby. I cannot prove it, but I felt it with every cell of my being." The journalist froze, stunned by the great physicist's confession. Einstein continued, his voice softer now. "As a child, I loved to look at the stars. It seemed to me they were gates to another world. Now, after decades of research, I think, perhaps the child in me was closer to the truth than the grown scientist. We are all connected with the cosmos, and when the body gives way, the soul returns to where it came from." He paused and added an unexpected comparison. "Imagine a river. Millions of streams flow into it. Each stream is a human life. But in the end, they all become part of one flow. So it is with souls. We are different, but the outcome is the same, the return to the source." Silence filled the room. Only the ticking of the clock reminded them of time. Einstein suddenly smiled. "And still, I cannot state this as an axiom. I have no equation that would prove my words. But intuition tells me death is not a period. It is a comma. It is not an end, but a beginning. Einstein took a deep breath as if gathering his thoughts and began to speak slowly, almost in a whisper. Have you ever looked at the starry sky in absolute silence? There is a sense of something infinite there, not emptiness but life. Sometimes it seems to me the stars are the eyes of eternity watching us. He took a sheet of paper and drew a circle. Look, if we take the universe, it has no beginning and no end. Everything is cyclical. Energy does not disappear, it changes form. It is the same with a human being. We think death is the finale, but perhaps it is only the transition to a new circle. The journalist could not resist. But isn't this just a beautiful metaphor, not science? Einstein shook his head. No, quantum physics confirms that matter can disappear and then reappear. Particles change state instantly, as if crossing a boundary and then returning. Why do you think the soul must follow different laws? We are quantum beings, even if we fear to admit it. He smirked and added, Do you know why scientists are so afraid of such ideas? Because they destroy their familiar world. It is easier to say, consciousness is born in the brain and dies with it. But that is like claiming music is born inside the violin. The violin is only the instrument. The true melody exists outside it. In the same way, the body is the instrument, and the soul is the melody. Einstein leaned closer to the journalist. Recently I discussed the phenomenon of black holes with a colleague. We are told everything that falls into them disappears, but disappearance is an illusion. Information cannot vanish. It only changes form, moving into another dimension. So what if death is also a black hole? We do not disappear, we transition into a world with other laws. His eyes lit up, not from tobacco but from an inner flame. People ask, where is the proof? But it is all around us, in every dream, in every déjà vu. When a person feels, I have already been here, I have already seen this face, where does it come from? Memory. But what kind of memory if the brain is not capable of storing what never happened? This is the memory of the soul, its journeys through the ages. He paused and gave a personal example. In the 21st year, when I was working on the theory of relativity, I had a dream. I was flying on a beam of light and saw the world completely differently. Later, that very dream helped me make a breakthrough in science. Tell me, how can an ordinary dream give equations that are later confirmed by experiments? Perhaps it was a message from another level of consciousness. The journalist listened, unable to believe his ears. Every word of the great scientist sounded like a confession of something forbidden. Einstein continued, I often think of the cosmos as a great library. Everything we call life and death are only pages of one book. We turn them, but the book itself is infinite. The soul reads it again and again until it learns the lessons. He looked out the window where the first stars were lighting up above the city. When you look at nebulae through a telescope, you feel new worlds are being born there. But why do we think death cannot be the beginning of something new? Does not a dying star give birth to light and planets? So too with man. At the moment of death, we become part of something greater. Einstein quoted the words of ancient philosophers. Pythagoras spoke of the transmigration of souls. Plato affirmed the world of ideas. The Indian Vedas taught that man is a spark in the ocean of consciousness. Is that a coincidence? No. For thousands of years, people have felt what science is only now beginning to study. The journalist, unable to hold back, asked, You mean to say that the afterlife is a fact? Einstein smiled sadly. Fact is too harsh a word. But I have a strong suspicion that death is not a wall, but a door. And one day, each of us will open it. He leaned forward and added with unexpected seriousness, Do you know what I fear? Not death. I fear that humanity will remain in ignorance, continuing to fear what should have inspired. If people understood, death is a return, not a disappearance, the world would be different. We would stop killing and hating. We would know that every soul will meet again. Silence hung in the room. Only the steady ticking of the clock reminded them that time was moving on. Einstein lit his pipe and said almost with a smile, "If I voiced all this at a scientific conference, they would consider me insane. But isn't it madness to refuse to see the obvious?" He paused and continued, "We know energy does not disappear. This law is taught in school. If energy is eternal, then why should consciousness, which is its manifestation, vanish? No. It simply changes form, like water turning into vapor. The soul is a special kind of energy, and death is not the end but merely a change of state." The journalist hurriedly wrote down every word. Einstein added, "Think about it. The atoms of your body were stars billions of years ago. You drink water, and in it are molecules that once swirled in the clouds over Egypt during the time of the pharaohs. Is this not proof that we are all connected with eternity? So why should consciousness be the exception? It is woven into the very fabric of the universe." He stood up and began to pace the room slowly. "I think about the future of science. The time will come when physicists will measure not only the motion of planets and particles, but also the vibrations of the soul. Instruments will be created that capture what people call the after-death experience, and then the secrets whispered by philosophers and mystics will become part of university courses." He smirked with bitterness. "But people love prohibitions. Tell them the truth. They will be frightened. It is easier for them to call it heresy than to admit life is much broader than their small world. That is why this interview can be called forbidden. It is too dangerous for those who build their authority on the fear of death." The journalist gathered his courage and asked, "But you are a scientist, accustomed to proof. What convinced you most of all?" Einstein stopped and looked straight into his eyes. "Facts. Strange, perhaps, but facts. I have seen people die. At the moment of their passing, something special always happened. First, heaviness, then sudden silence, and then a sensation of presence, as if the universe itself leaned toward the person. Call it a hallucination if you wish, but I am certain it is contact with another level of being." He fell silent, as if frightened by his own words. Then he continued, "In the 30s, I corresponded with an Indian sage. He wrote that a person could leave the body in a dream and travel through other worlds. At that time, I was skeptical, but one day I experienced something similar myself. I dreamed that I was soaring above the universe and saw it in its entirety, and when I awoke, formulas lay on my desk that I had not written, but they turned out to be correct. Where did they come from? Perhaps from another dimension." The journalist, astonished, could not restrain himself. "So you believe in astral travel?" Einstein spread his hands. "Call it what you will. I only know human consciousness is capable of going beyond the body. This is not fantasy, but a reality that science has not yet reached." He sat down again, gazing thoughtfully at his palms. "Man has been given a great gift, but he is afraid of it. We are used to clinging to the material, bread, home, money. But sooner or later all of it disappears. Then the main question remains, who am I really? And here the truth is revealed. I am not the body. I am part of the eternal energy that is called the soul." Einstein leaned forward and said quietly, "Many claim that science and spirituality are incompatible, but that is a lie. True science seeks truth, and truth always leads to the source of all existence, not to the God about whom religions argue, but to the higher reality. And death is a return to that reality." The journalist tried to steer the conversation into a practical direction. "If that is so, what should we do here while we are alive?" Einstein smiled almost fatherly and replied, "Learn, love, and prepare. Life is a school, and death is the exam. But it is not frightening. What is frightening is to live life in vain, never realizing that it is only part of the great journey." He paused for a long time and added, "I do not claim to know the truth definitively, but I feel beyond the boundary awaits not emptiness, but continuation, and perhaps this knowledge is my greatest discovery." Einstein leaned back in his chair, put out his pipe and looked out the window where twilight was thickening. "You know, I always dreamed of unraveling the mystery of the universe, but the more formulas and laws I discovered, the clearer I understood. Behind them lies something greater, as if reality itself hides from us the main answer, the meaning." He took a deep breath and continued, "I spoke to you about the soul, about the transition of consciousness, about vibrations. But I will be honest, I have no final answer. I only feel that man is not a random combination of atoms. We are connected with the eternal, and this feeling is stronger than any equations." The journalist carefully asked, "But if you were forced to choose, is there life after death or not?" Einstein smiled his enigmatic smile. "As a physicist, I will say, there is little direct proof, but as a man, I will say, there are too many hints to ignore. Each person chooses for himself. But I tend to think that death is a transition. We do not disappear, we return to where we came from." He gave an unexpected image. "In music, there is a pause. It seems like silence, but it is the pause that creates harmony. Life is the notes, death is the pause, but the melody goes on. We hear only the first part. The rest is hidden behind the curtain." The journalist froze. These words were simple and majestic at the same time. Einstein continued, "I have seen how science destroys old dogmas, but there is a dogma more frightening to break than any other. The dogma of death as the end. I believe humanity will one day overcome it. And then the greatest fear will disappear. People will begin to truly live." He walked across the room and added almost in a whisper, "Do you know why power and religion fear such conversations? Because a person who does not fear death becomes free. He stops obeying fear, and a free person is dangerous for any system." The journalist frowned. "So you are sure that the afterlife exists?" Einstein looked at his hands and replied, "I am sure of only one thing. Consciousness is more than brain chemistry. Everything else is hypotheses, but science will one day find the evidence. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000. For now, we have faith. Not blind, but based on observations, logic, and experience." He suddenly laughed. "Funny, isn't it? All my life I searched for the theory of everything, but I found only new questions. Maybe that is the truth. The universe is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived." The journalist closed his notebook, realizing, this conversation could not be published. Too dangerous. Too soon. Einstein looked out the window one last time and spoke words that remained forever in the memory of his companion. "If there is nothing after death, we lose nothing. But if there is, we gain everything. Think about it. And perhaps, when your hour comes, you will know the truth yourself." He raised his finger as if emphasizing the thought. "Remember, the truth is always hidden behind the curtain, and the curtain opens only once." Silence filled the room. The journalist felt as if the air had grown denser, as if the cosmos itself was listening to these words. And it was in this silence that Einstein left the question open. Not an assertion, not proof, but a riddle that continues to trouble minds and hearts to this day.